It was really fun though, yeah.
Oh,
What's
wasn't
happening?
it?
So good to chat with you.
Well, it's like great to chat with you. And look at you now with this film. I was able to get a sneak peek here in New Zealand, and
Yeah.
I am uh, I have not a romantic bone in my body. I think my heart's been taken,
Yeah.
and there's battery acid that's been poured on it. And to sit in a film that was made for adults, it had
Yeah.
a purity of spirit, and it said it like it was. It was such a bloody treat. So thank you so much.
Thank you so, so much. Thank you for I feel like it's like to me what I really love about like getting to make movies for grown-ups is that we get to then have grown-up conversations, which I think we don't have enough places to have grown-up conversations. So you think, yeah,
You are so
yeah.
true.
Hmm.
Let's just start with the germ of this story. How long has it
Yeah.
been sort of bubbling away inside you?
So I in my 20s, like back in like 2016, like I worked as a matchmaker for about 6 months. It wasn't very long, but I really learned a lot in that time. I think that I learned more about human beings and everything else than I think that I did in any other time of my life. So I think that that just really was incredible. And I just feel like something about working on that job and then just hearing the way that people talk for real about
Mhm.
dating because I mean, I feel like the people actually are very honest with the matchmaker. I would say that more than even to their therapist, right? And of
Yeah.
course, the character in the film says that. She goes like, like you're better than therapists. Like they talk to you more openly than they do therapists because a matchmaker is somebody who's supposed to find you love, which I mean, think about those words, right? Someone who's supposed to find you love, that's somebody that you start to demand in such a deep way. Right? And then I think
Yeah.
that when I heard what my clients wanted from their matches, and then when I really heard the way that they wanted to describe their partners, and it would always be in numbers. It would be height, weight, income, age, right? And
Yeah.
then of course, right, and then by the end of it, I think that I always thought like, well, but none of those things have anything to do with this very ancient feeling and a very deep mystery, which is the mystery of love. As in, like when I felt love, I'm sure this is such a real thing where it's like when you talk to somebody who loves you and you're like,
Yeah.
hi, like, why do you love me? You're not going to hear a single number. Love is famously an unquantifiable, right? No answers thing. And I think that what's really wild to me is that the way that that's kind of being, the way that I'm having to deal with, the gap between all the numbers that people are saying is a way to describe the partners that they want. And then, of course, the gap between that and this uh, ancient feeling, which is love. The gap between those two things, I think that really baffled me. And it really troubled me even at that time. And as I was leaving this job after 6 months, I think that I really felt like, oh yeah, one day I'm gonna write something about it.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think I tried to crack it a few times in my last like 10 years or whatever. And then I had this opportunity when I thought it would be, and there's a moment where I even thought it would be a TV show. Like, I was trying to figure out like how to do this story. And then
Yeah.
I had this opportunity between when I finished Past Lives and and I just finished working on it completely, and then I didn't have anything to do, and then the Sundance premiere that launched the journey for that movie. So between those two things, I had about 6 months or something where I didn't have anything to do. So, and I felt a little bit, I went a little bit, I was really going a little bit crazy because I was like, I knew that I was a filmmaker, but nobody knew. Like I was the only one who had the secret that I was a filmmaker and that I want to make another movie. So I thought, I'm just gonna make a decision to write my next movie. So I took that time to write the next movie. So even before Past Lives came out into the world, I wrote the script. And the whole time I was releasing Past Lives, I was putting together Materialists and thinking about Materialists and thinking about that, Yeah.
How fascinating. It's also interesting hearing you talk about that because the numbers conversation is so confronting to me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get a sense. I know, New York is like this microcosm of the world sometimes. And do you
Hmm.
think that that way of looking at love is more pronounced in New York or in America than it is anywhere else?
Well, I think that New York has a very specific kind of materialism, and I think that we can find different cities having different kinds of ways of expressing their materialism, consumerism. I'm sure like Dubai has its own, version of that, right? For example, or like I'm sure Sydney has, what I mean? I think that it's like kind of like all these like anytime there's a concentration of wealth and power in a
Yeah.
location, that location is
Mm.
going to express the kind of the materialists, in its own way. Like London, I know has its own materialism, for example, right? Or like
Yeah.
Paris, like
Yeah.
so it's kind of like um so I think that what the materialism that I know because I live in New York City is the
That's it.
one in New York City. And I think that New York was just the right setting for this film because, and I think that, but I think it is pretty universal in most
Yeah.
cities, which is that to survive in a huge metropolis, you have to be both such a dreamer because you have to be such a romantic, right? Because you have to believe that your big dreams and ambitions will come true. And also, you have to be a bit of a cynic because just to survive the day to day and to compete and to
Yeah.
really like, watch our backs. Like, I feel like so it's a kind of to live in a huge city like where there is so much power and wealth for the taking, right? It's kind of like you are going to have to walk the line between being a very, very cynical person and also
That's it.
being a bit of a romantic too. Yeah.
But also, and this is what I loved about this, is the realist nature of it. Because I guess if we look at it conceptually, then that element of needing to survive, there was a great line in the film which alluded to the fact that this decision that we make about being, choosing a person changes the whole course of our lives and how we live. So in that context, it's a huge decision that we make. And
Mhm.
also, if you're living in an environment which is constantly challenged by an inability to fiscally function and survive, that brings in a whole raft of challenges into a relationship, especially if there's
Yeah.
a disparity there. And you would just address those issues with such tenderness, but also in such an honest way,
Yeah.
which it's not easy to do. So,
No, yeah. Well, I think that the honesty and the brutal honesty of it, I think
yeah,
that is all, of course, going to have to be connected to a great deal of empathy and humanity
yeah,
too. Because otherwise, it's like, well, I don't think that it's hard to criticize these things that feel, like obviously, like, it's very easy to wag your finger at the thing and be like, wow,
yeah,
why would you be such a materialist? But on the other hand, I think that I have so much empathy and sympathy as myself being someone who understands materialism. It's kind of
yeah,
like, yeah, of course, you want nice things, right? You want nice things, you want to survive. It's really
yeah,
hard to jump from one class to another just to
yeah,
build wealth. It's like, and then your life, and then also there's a question of like, is your whole life going to be about that? Right.
yeah.
And the
That's
costs of
right.
that, right? And then the costs of that personally, right? So it's like the thing is, it's like the truth is that the modern life, the to be a modern person living in the world, having ambitions to change your class and having ambitions to pursue your career and try to find a
Mm.
better life for yourself. I think all of those things are, and then everything else that comes from it is going to be something where you're just going to be dealing with this kind of, whatever is brutally honest about it is just worth talking about and to
Oh,
talk about it, let's
100.
just say tenderly, right? Like
Yeah.
tenderly and with admitting that
Yep.
like we all are materialists because that's why the title is not one materialist, right? It's
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
materialists, and I think it's all three of them, and I think it's also everybody else in the film, and also it's I think all of us. I
It
think there is a
is.
part of it where we are having to contend with our material reality that asks us to be materialistic, right?
Yeah, I also think there's a part of it for me at 57, about to turn 58, is that it's also getting older and understanding that, like the kind of the early kind of
Yeah,
shiny sparkliness of love will conquer all. And I'm
yeah,
not saying that you don't have to not believe in that, but there's so much more to it. Let's talk about that 6 months from Sundance to, and then
yeah,
past lives just going. And then in your next
yeah.
film that you've been pottering around on, you suddenly have Captain America, The
Yeah.
Mandalorian, and Madam Web. Oh, starring in your film. How
Oh my
amazing.
God. Well, I feel like so much of it had to do with sort of like meeting them as the people that they are. Because I feel like,
Yeah.
I think that a line in the film, which I think is a key line in the whole film, is I'm not merchandise, I'm a person. I think what's so true about all three of my actors, and I think in general all actors, is that they understand the feeling of like, well, I'm not merchandise, I'm a person, right? They understand that because all three of them have experienced being treated as merchandise, right?
So
And
true.
so, and I think that so much of it, I think they gave themselves so deeply to the characters, and they really fought to fought for this movie in such a deep way, where they like every day they showed up and they gave themselves to it. And I think it's because they understand the film so deeply. They understand what it feels like to say, like, I'm not merchandise, I'm a person. So similarly, when I was casting them, I wasn't really casting them thinking about the merchandise that they are. I'm thinking about them as people, right? Because I mean, I think that it's also hard to imagine if you're just thinking about the merchandise. Imagine Chris being an incredible John, right? It's kind
Mm,
of hard to imagine that if you're just thinking about Chris Evans as a merchandise. But if you
yeah.
meet Chris as a person, he's a John, like you meet
Yeah.
him and you're like, oh my God, no, Chris is a John, my God. So, but I think that for that to happen though, I cannot approach casting in any way except as if I'm falling in love. So it's kind of like I always say like casting is there's a bit of matchmaking in casting, and I feel like a great casting director also is a matchmaker, right? As in like, well, I have these characters that are on my in my script that I scripted, and I don't write with actors in mind. So these are
Mm.
characters in the script. And then I go out into the world looking for, as if a matchmaker, a soulmate of those characters. So I'm going out there trying to find a soulmate for these characters, and it's not always going to be expected, right? So in the case of like, and I think that it's just like love. It's not always going to be expected, and it's always going to be coming from a place of inspiration. Like it always has to come from a place of pure
Yeah.
inspiration, of like just like love, right? You have to fall in love. I have to fall in love with the idea that this person is a right fit for the role so that we can find this character who is also a person together. Because I'm not asking them to show up and play merchandise, right?
No, you're
I'm asking
not.
them to play a real, flawed, deep adult human being. So go ahead. Sorry.
And absolutely. And when you think about the unicorn aspect of Harry, I mean, it feels in a way the unicorn aspect of Pedro Pascal himself, because
Yeah.
he just exudes such a kindness. And I mean, this is from a distance, and obviously in interviews I've done with him, he just inherently feels like a good person. And I think the Harry
Yeah.
character couldn't be a villain, could he? So that piece of
No.
casting feels so inspired. Did you
Of
know Pedro
course.
before, or was
Yeah,
did
I
you
knew
get?
Pedro before, and I think that I wasn't really thinking so much about him as the character of Harry until he and I had this amazing conversation. It was like a social situation because we were friends, and he
Yeah.
said something about how he is um, and we ended up talking about the matters of the heart. And somewhere in there, I think that I just realized, and again, it's about knowing Pedro as not as merchandise, but as a person, right? And then
Yeah.
you just realize that he's the right person for that role. Because I mean, the character of Harry is very difficult to cast because he's
Yeah.
supposed to be a perfect guy, right? He's supposed to be the guy who is like completely what is it? Like how would I describe it? Like it's like he's somebody who's dominant in the dating market, right? Like, he is the
Mm.
one that everybody's desire is for. So, and so I think that it's easy to cast somebody that you think is a jerk, right? It's so easy because I feel like so many like tall, good-looking, handsome, like good-looking actors, like it's like so many of them in that role may not be adorable, like worth adoring. And I think
Yeah.
that what's amazing about Pedro in that role is that because he actually has so much like natural charm and everything. It's like it is so easy to love him in that role. But also on
Mm.
top of that, he's also somebody who understands the journey that Harry is going through too. Because again, um, that character is so deeply about how it is very difficult to navigate love and how difficult to feel love. And I think in that way, it's kind of a perfect thing. It's like he's kind of somebody who is such a deep person and a very soulful person that I think he just
Yeah.
understood the character, you know.